Hi, everybody, and welcome to this new 2025 episode of the Dr. Psych Mom Show. So, Happy New Year, and thank you always for listening. Today, we are going to be talking about this idea that a stay-at-home mom should not get half of the money if you divorce, and that's bullshit, and I'll talk about why, but that was the spoiler. Before that, please do subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was a special New Year's Eve episode for subscribers with a pep talk for how to make this new year your best ever. And if you want to hear me speak to you more directly as a subscriber and tell you about what I think you may be doing wrong and what you could do right for the new year, then subscribe to get that and over 185 other subscriber episodes. Okay, so whenever I post about how people should get divorced if they can't figure out their sex life, if they want to, if they want to be in a sexless marriage for the kids or whatever, but especially once it's adult kids, I tend to say, if you cannot figure out your sexual disparity issues in therapy, and you cannot empathize with one another to the point that you can come to any compromise within your sex life, which of course is going to look different for older people, then separate instead of just remaining locked together in passive-aggressive misery, basically trying to wait out the other person to die so that you can get all the money, because that's what it really is. Because otherwise, if it's two living people, then the bank account is divided by two, for any thinking person. But if that person dies, then of course you do get all of it. But if you are locked in some sort of Twilight Zone-esque fight to the finish, hoping that you get everything, of course if it was the Twilight Zone at the end of that episode, it would turn out that you had no money in the bank somehow, and then it would all have been for naught, which is a common theme in the Twilight Zone. I love the Twilight Zone. I always allude to different episodes. But anyway, then that, in my mind, is not really a healthy dynamic, right? So some guys say, but I don't want to divorce because she was a stay-at-home mom. Now, keep in mind, 75% of working-age women work, so most people are not stay-at-home moms. But anyway, for the people that are, they say she was a stay-at-home mom and I worked, so then it should be divided by the contribution. One guy in my comments said, we should divide my assets 95-5 because I earned 95% of them. And this was a person who had children. And I said, what we should do in these cases is we should make if a guy wants to have a majority split of the assets in his direction because he worked, and of course this is a joke, you should never do this. I don't know how literal-minded people are, but I said you should have to make a PowerPoint for the adult children describing how you should get 95% of the assets because you worked, and mom is so useless and did nothing, so therefore she should get 5%. Which is kind of, I felt, a humorous rejoinder, but either way, don't do it. But point being, no man can pick up his head if he isn't a sociopath. He would be too ashamed to try to tell the children that their mother had been not a contributor to their life as a family. In fact, most stay-at-home moms, unless they are suffering with profound mental illness, most stay-at-home moms are doing, of course, as they should, right? Because they're at home. They're doing 95% of the family stuff, and he's doing 95% of the earning. Now, with younger couples, not these couples that are worrying about post-menopause or post-perimenopause drop in libido and dividing a lifetime of assets, but younger people, as I've discussed, younger working men, you can just type in the word younger into the Spotify search app in the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Younger working men are condescended to in the way that stay-at-home moms used to be. So when they get home, the woman says basically, what'd you even do all day? I was doing the majority of the work here. And that woman would probably say, just equally as stupidly, right, I should get 95% of the assets if we ever split because I'm the one in the trenches here with the children. Right? Now, both of these things are stupid, right? So if you are working together as a family, then, and some sort of number needs to be ascribed to each person's relative contribution, then it should certainly be 50-50, right? Because who can really tell? So a man that thinks that he should get 95% because he was working, it reminds me of just these completely delusional. Sometimes I have parents and children, right, in for estrangement therapy. And sometimes like the parent will say, oh no, everything was wonderful. Everything was wonderful. And the kid's like, what about, and then he'll say something that like can't really be forgotten unless the person's literally trying to delude themselves, the parent, because they feel it's so painful to think back at how things really were, right? So the kid will be like, what about when I was in therapy for 2 years, starting in preteen because I wanted to kill myself? The parent will be like, oh, is that what that was? Because I thought that was acclimating to middle school. I don't remember it that way, And it's like the child, like sometimes like the kids, when they feel gaslighted and this stuff, they act like people who feel gaslighted in couples. So they'll like go back to like, their records, or like they'll call the old therapist or something. They'll be like, no, here it is, an evaluation, and I'm laughing not because it's funny, but it's kind of like black humor, like with Black Mirror and everything, morbid humor. And the kid will be like, no, here it is. Here's like an evaluation where I said like my life was terrible and like this and that. So basically like, what if in these cases, I'm saying, what if the guy asked the children, who was there for you in your childhood? Especially somebody who thinks like this. I mean, this is not a nice guy, right? This is not a kind person. So probably the kid would say, mom should get 95% of the assets because she's the one who drove me here and did this and did that and whatever. So couples that split things down the middle where dad's cheering on Little League, the guys who are cheering on Little League are not the guys who say my wife should be left as a penniless miser on the street because she does not have enough sex with me. So if I leave her, then she should get nothing. Like that is not like a healthy way of thinking. So these are not the guys that are good with any people. They're not good with their wife. They're not good with their kids. So point being is that if you have a stay-at-home parent as a spouse, it is likely that the children think that they should get the majority of the assets, quite honestly, if they were to be asked. And again, they should never be asked, obviously. But the idea that having a family is all about financial provision is absurd. In fact, the financial provision is likely the least integral part in the children's mind of what it was to be a family. Because, of course, families can be at any level. Now, of course, somebody needs to have some sort of job, right? In most cases, where it's not that the parents, you're living with the parents, or the parents support you, or you have intergenerational wealth. In most cases, somebody needs to have a job. But what people do not need to have is a job that is so big and so successful that there are so many assets to divide that the person is complaining about having to split up the multiple properties and to do this and to do that with all of the accounts and all of the assets and all of the real estate and all of the cars, which is the people that I see complaining about this, right? And in that case, the children that I see then as they grow up and become young adults, they idealize shit like Little House on the Prairie, where like Pa was around, but they all lived in like a one-room shack. It wasn't a shack, it was a nice cabin, at least on television. But the point is that the people that have so many assets that they start to think of it as only theirs, and how they were married to the job and constantly work traveling and coming home late, who do they think was taking care of the kids during that time? I mean, of course she was. There's no way to have a big career without help. There is no way. Now, there are some guys who say, well, I got her a nanny at this level. I got her a nanny, and I got her a housekeeper, and I got her an extra nanny, and I got her an extra housekeeper, and, whatever. And she basically didn't have to do anything. Well, unless she literally left, wasn't there, and the nannies and the housekeeper ran the whole house, in which case they should get the assets. I think they should get the assets in that case. But I do not really know situations like that in which the woman was not there for the children in the absence of the man when he was working. She was not there in the afternoon. She was not there in the mornings. And she completely just hid out in her bed or left the house while the staff took care of the children. In that case, honestly, that person sounds pretty selfish. The guy sounds selfish. The woman sounds selfish. Everybody sounds selfish. So maybe the assets should just directly be mainlined to the kids and the both of them should be on the street. I don't really know, but it is a caricature of a situation because the majority, vast, beyond vast majority of women, if they hook themselves up to a high-earning guy, they understand that they are never, ever going to come anything but second to the demands of the career, and therefore their schedule has to be around his, and they have to be there for the children. And so in that case, yes, of course, they deserve 50-50 because marriage is 50-50. And so then there's this idea, well, what if she stops wanting to have sex with me? Then basically she is ending the marriage. All right, cool. So then the marriage ended. If you think that, of course, I think you should work on it. Many of these guys that would say things like this would have to work on their own self-absorption, their own inability to empathize, and the woman would have to work on being more direct, being more assertive, etc. But, and maybe she's selfish too, because selfish attracts selfish a lot of the time, which people don't like to hear. You can refer to my narcissist borderline dynamic on other things people don't want to hear, But point being is that if you are together, both people could end a marriage and both people could decide to stop doing things. So the thing is that a lot of these guys are like, well, why can't I just stop working? Well, the real reason, anybody who makes enough money can stop working, right? But if you don't have enough money, you have to keep working for yourself because then you don't live, right? And then the kids don't live. If you have no kids, stop earning immediately. I mean, just stop going to work. If you want to stop going to work, you've saved up enough money, you don't have children, well then downsize, live on the beach, teach surfing, do whatever your dream is, and don't work. But here's the thing, if you have children, then they have to eat, right? So then you're not just working for her. That's where it loses the argument loses its teeth because he's working for himself and he's working for the kids. And in any occupation where he's making a lot of money, he's working to self-actualize, and this is always an unpopular opinion, but it's the truth. I look at my job, right? I don't just work to make money. I work because this is a lot of my self-concept is derived from helping other people, growing my business, and providing for my family. If I just stopped working, then we would have to downsize quite a bit, right? And I wouldn't want to do that. It doesn't matter if my husband and I have sex 5 times a day, 1 time a day, no times a day, I would still work, right? And that's the same situation as most men are in, right? You would have to work anyway. And what she would have to do, what her job was, if she was a stay-at-home mom, right? What her job is taking care of the kids. Taking care of the kids. She has to do that whether you're married to her, whether you're nice to her, whether you talk to her, whether you take her on date nights, or whether you curse at her, or whether you yell at her, or whether you drink, or whether you cheat, or whether you hit her, or anything. She can leave you, but she still has to do her thing, which is taking care of the kids. So it's all about the family there. Nobody can just renege on the responsibilities to the children, right? If you choose to have children because you want to spite the other person. So in the case that the children are all out of the house and they are then over 18 and you decide, let's say that you don't want to give them any more money, they're adults, fine, then stop working if you want to stop working and then get your divorce. If you want to make sure that she does not get any of your ongoing income, remember alimony is only 10% of cases, could look that up, but if you want to make sure that she doesn't get any of your income, then retire. But most people are like, no, I want to keep working. I love my job, or at the very least, I want to keep being able to provide to my children and helping them out. Well, then that is a loving thing that you're doing. Good. Call a spade then. That's what you're trying to do. You're not working for her. It's not that kind of thing. Because what you could always do is decide to downsize, downgrade, etc., and your children are not going to they're not going to require child support forever. And anyway, we're talking about the situation where it's no longer relevant because they're adults. And she still takes care of the children in her way, and most women do. And when you give half the assets to your wife, guess what she does with it? Most women don't go out on a shopping spree to the exclusion of the children. They save it all and it rolls down the next generation to the children the same as yours does. and that's what that does. If there are really these big assets, there are not women who are like, oh, good, I'm getting $5 million. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spend it. I'm going to put that on red, and I'm going to roll the dice. No, what they think immediately is, how am I going to preserve this wealth? What's my asset management plan? I should go see a lawyer so that I make sure that all of this goes to the kids. And in fact, since women remarry less often than men, then they often think, oh no, he's going to spend all of his money on his new wife and potentially even a second family, thus diverting the resources from my children. I, though, am going to keep the resources for my children. So that's usually what happens with the assets that you don't want to give your ex-wife. Well, A, it's not yours to give because it's divided down the middle, which is my entire point, and it should be. And B, it goes right to the children. She pays for the wedding. She pays for the grandkids. She gives this. She gives that. The women that I've seen end up with, so by the way, it's so funny, the phrase also, divorce makes some women rich. Where do they get an infusion? They always had half of that money. They obviously have the same half that they always had. She was buying anything she wanted then too, Now, she used to have a big house shared with him. Now she may have a house shared with not him. That's very nice. And guess what? So does he. So this is the people that are saying, I worked so hard and I busted my ass and all this work travel and all this and all this that, they have less of an idea what was going on at home to manage everything than the guys that were home with much less money, because they had more regular hours. And those guys don't have to give alimony because they don't have as much money. The alimony is only for the very, very big wealth disparities. And in those cases, by the way, all of the research indicates that gray divorce is much worse for women. Women have a 45% decrease in their wealth and men have only 21%. And the only way that women can get back up at all is by remarrying, which most of them don't do. So the point is that men who have the higher earning capacity, because they were working all those years versus a stay-at-home woman who was not, right? They can make back the money, or either way, they end up with higher, they're better. They end up in a better financial situation, assets, wealth, and continued income. So that is just what I think about that. And if you are ever in a situation where you think that you deserve more than the other partner, think about what the children would say. Never ask, but think about what they would say as to who deserves more. Unless you have raised the little, what's that guy's name? I forget. That guy on YouTube that that says all the bad things about women. Unless you've raised a little one of those, there is no kid who's going to be like, yeah, kick mom out. Mom deserves to live on the street. You're the one who was doing all of the work. No way. Come on. All right. I will talk to everybody soon. Nice, good, rousing start to the new year in this podcast. Please do subscribe. And we do have an accountability group coming up. If you want to get your goals conquered in the new year, join our accountability group in any state and country. I will link to that in the episode description. And we also have a better breakup group. So if you listen to this and you're like, man, I'm getting out of Dodge before I earn even more money and have to give my sexless wife even less, yes, fine, good. Or if you're a woman who's like, that is how my asshole husband thinks, isn't that crazy? Then we have the better breakup group for people who are going to divorce or break up. Probably. They're not sure yet. Well, Susanna, our coach, this is for anybody in any state or country because she's a coach, so she can work with anybody anywhere. She will help you figure out if you want to break up, and if so, how to do that in a healthy way without some War of the Roses-esque, catastrophic ending that hurts the children and hurts everybody involved. All right, talk to everybody soon. Have a great day, guys.